All right, welcome back, guys. My name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. You might not recognize me without my hat or glasses, but it's a little cloudy today, nice and cool, so we're just gonna go ahead and hit the rocks with the trucks. Today, I've got a really weird one for you. We've got a Capra on Traxx, but not just a Capra, a rear steer Capra with Traxx, and I brought out my Capra. You guys have actually seen this car before. If you've been a subscriber for a while, I compared it against my Element Gatekeeper that was on Capra axles. This is Tyson's car, and you might recognize the name Tyson whenever I talk about the Mousetrap Trail. He helped break open one of the lines on the entrance of it. So Tyson has requested that I run this through part of Mousetrap, and we're gonna see how that thing does. I'm gonna run it through some of the obstacles I have in mind for it first, and then we're gonna compare it against a Capra on tires. So I've got 2.2 inch wheels and 5.4 inch tall tires. My Capra is stretched, his Capra is stretched, and then with the Traxx on there, like just oodles of clearance under the portal axles, so should be a good comparison. I ended up throwing the weighted knuckles off of his car onto mine. If you're curious how to mount these Traxx, these are the Traxxas Traxx. You have to through bolt them and drill a hole through your portal box and then put a nut on the back side of it. Not a great way to do it, definitely not designed for this, but you can kind of redneck it and make it happen. Let's go see how she does on the rocks. All right, guys, here we are on our first obstacle with the tracked Capra. To be honest and open, I do not expect this thing to perform very well, but Tyson was curious how it would do out here on the rocks, and I gotta be honest, I'm definitely curious how it's gonna do as well. So you can see those Traxx are able to articulate up and down a little bit to kind of square up to the obstacle. They are limited by a shock that is hard mounted to the axle itself. Like I was talking about how it's mounted to that portal box. I try not to get it too bound up because I don't want to break these things. As well as this car is very powerful with the Axe brushless system in here. Doesn't really want to go up this. I've got a lot more power on tap, but I also don't want to break this car already. So this thing is certainly not a crawler with the Traxx on it. The compound on the track itself is bad. So kind of off to a disappointing start. All right, we've got a stand-in driver here. My wife is gonna go ahead and cruise up this line on my car with the tires. Nice and easy, not a challenge for that car. All right, guys, we've got a real big chute to climb all the way to the top of. Let's see how this new contraption handles it. So because of the way I bolted the Traxx onto the portal boxes, I actually lost quite a bit of steering angle, and the servos will try and force it further than it can mechanically move. So I'm trying to avoid like pinning the steering because I don't want to break an axle prematurely. Once that track hit that left edge, it kind of started cruising up this. Yeah, I think the biggest downside to this is just the compound of the Traxx. Like, it's a pretty hard, plasticky rubber feel, and it just doesn't hook up like a tire does, especially an awesome tire like that Proline G8 compound. Like I mentioned, I didn't expect this to go very well, but I figured it would do okay on just steep climbs. Try some kind of like weird angles here. Trying to figure out how these tracks work and where to put track placement, I guess you could call it. You guys will have to let me know what you think of this kind of setup on a rear steer Capra. I'm kind of doing it as a goof because I think it's entertaining. Would you guys ever seriously consider getting a setup like this to go run? So far, my tires are way more capable than these Traxx are. Again, the wife's driving. She's gonna show us how it's done with my car, show us how easily it can cruise up through here. The top right dial on your controller, you can turn that a little bit right. It'll straighten your rear wheels. There you go. Yep. looky there, I work as a spotter too. Yeah, should be pretty evident that the tires cruised up here a little less effort than the Traxx did. All right, now we're getting into the stuff that I like to do with cars with tires. So I'm curious how the Traxx will react in terrain like this, where you end up on like the edges of the tracks. Don't mind me, dog, just hanging out. Look out. Okay, now we're getting to the point. This car is extremely wide, even compared to my Capra, which I consider wide. The Traxx are a full track width wider than my tire vehicle. Okay, so let's see if we can throw this bad boy and dig, because it's a Capra. It should be capable of it. Okay, my front right, it's not driving for some reason. Getting bound up in here. Oh, we're losing a track back here. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured would happen. All right, the takeaway from attempt number 1, total dumpster fire. Side note, the rear servo is getting very, very warm, so apparently it's working real hard to keep that rear axle straight. We'll send her back in here and see what happens. Going back up into the canyon. Another thing is those tracks are not easy to like get back onto the track, I guess. Once the tread kind of comes off, kind of a pain in the ass to work on. It just seems like this car is fighting to make these tracks work. It does not like having them on there. Also, I don't know why that front right stopped driving, but it's working still. So I guess that's good. Really steep here. I'm kind of surprised at the angle it's actually able to hold. That rear is in a terrible spot. Oh, you can hear it slipping along. Yeah, this is not a canyon crawler with Traxx. Not surprised by that. Yeah, we're just gonna pull it out of here. It's not getting through here. There's the dog again. She'll be back in a second. And there she goes. Okay. So here's my tired car. What's funny is now that I've driven the car with the Traxx, this looks incredibly narrow, which is kind of funny to say about a Capra. So dump the front tires off here. My rear steer is actually a little bit crooked. But I'm filming with a controller in one hand, and then I'm driving one-handed with my other. So, I'm driving with 2 controllers at the moment. I want to get my rear end a little closer to that wall. Bring it up, get that tire up on the wall. There we go. So in situations like this, I certainly like my tires better. Granted, I've got a lot more experience with this, but also at the same time, the tracks were malfunctioning and unable to deliver the torque necessary to get through. So I'm gonna call that a big win for the tires. All right, we're gonna avoid the canyons here after that because it's just not happening. So I'm not even gonna get into Mousetrap. Sorry, Tyson. It's not gonna do it. So trying to work our way up some ledges, see how it handles that. Like I say, it just doesn't get traction. These tracks are really good for snow because it helps the car float. But as far as like pushing it up an obstacle, there's just no traction here. And like without traction, wheel speed doesn't help you either. They do worse than I thought they were going to, and I expected them to do bad, so I guess there's the surprise in all this testing. Trying to get them to do something. And like, I know how to judge an obstacle of what's possible for a tire vehicle, and I know that my tire car will go up this. There she goes, a little bit of work. It's just slipping and sliding all over the place. Like it's struggling on stuff that is not challenging. Well guys, I was less than impressed with the Traxx on the Capra. I don't know what you guys thought about it, but gonna go ahead and jam my Capra into this crazy sideways like balancing act thing. I crawled this the other day with one of my buddies out here, but I had 6mm hex spacers on the fronts. Currently I don't. We're gonna see if I can get the car to fit anyway. Just trying to break through wiggle servos and a little more wheel speed than I was looking for. Car gets jammed up in here, but it's possible. This is a really cool one because it's all leaned over on the right side, and like the walls are almost vertical, which makes this really tough. And then towards the top, you get a lot of the car up above the ground. It's pretty cool. A little too much on the rear there. Oh, need to bring it back. Watch what the front's doing, watch what the rear's doing. That's pretty much where I wanted it to go. And on my first shot, with the tires, I was able to get in and out of there because they are predictable and they work and they can deliver torque to the ground, unlike Traxx. So I put the Traxx on ledges, I put the Traxx in a V-notch, I put it on some steep climbs, and overall the tires just work better. So curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are. Drop a comment down below. Well guys, that was certainly an interesting experiment putting Traxx on a Capra. It was kind of cool that it still had dig. I don't know why. I thought that was kind of funny. Traxx burning out there. But not what I'm going to be doing for performance. But I will leave affiliate links down below to those Traxx, as well as the Capra, as well as the build that I have on my Capra. If you guys are curious about picking up some of the parts that I have, like that Spektrum brushless ESC censored brushless system, lots of wheel speed, 2100 kV, super fun to rip around with. My name's Logan with West Desert Wheeler. I greatly appreciate your guys' time. Look forward to hearing your guys' comments. We will see you in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.